Word up, this is Alan Smith and I'm coming at you today, and today we want to talk about evangelism, but from a slightly different angle. Most people watching this video probably struggle with evangelism, kind of like me. And several years ago, they were asking a leading apologist and evangelist, Francis Schaeffer, how he did this. And they asked him the question, if you had an hour with a non-Christian, what would you say? And I love his answer. He said this. He said, I probably would spend the first 55 minutes asking questions to see what troubled them, and then spend the last 5 minutes addressing those concerns. I think this is very helpful because a lot of times we struggle with evangelism because we're more concerned about being understood than seeking to understand the other person. Because the key to effective evangelism is listening. And you know someone who's really good at this? Jesus. He was a master at asking good questions. Someone counted that he asked, let me look at my notes here, 307 questions in the Gospels. He asked questions like this, once to a beggar, what do you want me to do for you? That's a good question. He asked also to someone sick, do you want to get well? He asked to his disciples, who do people say that I am? And even a better question, who do you say that I am? And the classic Jesus, when asked a question, you know what he did? He responded by asking another question. And I'll tell my kids not to do that. But we learn that Jesus really sought to understand people. Psycholinguists tell us that it's very rare for someone to get two meaningful questions, like two follow-up questions in a conversation. And this is important because when people are being asked questions, they feel like you're getting to know them. And when they feel known, then they feel loved. And when they feel loved, they'll open up to you. Now, I have been on this journey of learning how to be a good listener for over 10 years. I've been told by multiple people in the past and even today that I'm not a good listener. So I've really tried to work hard. I do think there are skills that we can learn to listen better. In fact, I've become a certified gospel coach, and all that is someone who has learned to ask good questions. So the rest of this video, I want to share some of my top 7 pro tips on becoming a better evangelistic listener. Okay, so the first pro tip is to listen spiritually. Just remember that God is already at work in your conversation. It's not just a dialogue, it is a trialogue. You are with this person in the presence of God. And the way that looks for me practically is that I pray short prayers, and I put my heart in a posture of dependence. I don't pray the whole time or I would not be listening, but I do pray like, God, help me understand this person. And then I wait for God to show up and follow his lead. The next is this, listen actively. That means being fully present, and your goal is to understand the person, not to agree with the person, but to understand them. And that means don't interrupt them, don't think about what you're going to say next, and just wait for the period so you can interject what you're going to say, or even change the subject, but seek to understand the person. And for me, what that looks like is I have to defer my judgment. I have to just withhold that. I don't have to agree with everything, but I'm trying to be fully present with that person. The next pro tip is to listen with the eyes and not just with the ears. Experts tell us that only 7% of communication happens with actual words. Think about that, only 7%. The other, I look at my notes here, 38% is with tonality, the vocal variety, and the other 55% is with body language and facial expressions. And so you listen with your eyes and you're watching their facial expressions and their body posture. The fourth pro tip is as you're listening with your eyes, then listen empathetically to them. And all that means is you're trying to help them feel that you feel them, that you're not necessarily agreeing with them theologically or morally, but you are helping them relate, that you're with them. And that looks like practically, it could be, I see, oh yeah, you do this already. You probably just need to figure out how you do this and just naturally do this. And just try to make them know. Because if you don't do this, they'll be like, what are they thinking about? If you have a stone face and they're like, you're not with me. So empathetically is connecting with them in that conversation. And as they speak words, listen for emotionally charged words. Words like, it crushed me, or I was perplexed, or I was just a hot mess. And the reason why is because emotions and feelings are the language of the heart. They typically are honest and they don't lie to you. And so if you pick up on any of their emotional language, a good follow-up question is to gently label their emotion just by saying something like this and starting it with, it seems or it sounds. It seems like you're confused, or it sounds like you are frustrated. And if you label it correctly, they may respond by saying, yeah, I am confused, or yeah, I am perplexed. And then another good follow-up question to that is, how did that impact you? And it'll give them some space to explore their heart. The next pro tip is to ask open-ended questions. You probably have heard this before, but let me take another step with you on this. The questions what and how are always open-ended questions. That's a little trick that you can learn. And when you ask them that question, it provokes openness and creativity. Really try to avoid the question why at the beginning, because the why question can sound a little judgy. It can be a very, very powerful question at the right moment, but at the beginning of a conversation typically closes it down. Now, if you do ask closed-end questions, it does help bring clarity. So if you want to rephrase something and ask them, was this what you mean? It's a closed-ended question. It helps bring clarity to any confusion you might have about the other person. The last pro tip is to summarize what you just heard in your own words. And after you do that, you may want to follow up with the question, is that what you meant? And if they say, that's it, those are two magical words. Those are words that indicate that you have just accomplished your mission. You have understood them, and more than likely, they feel loved. Well, I hope those pro tips are as helpful to you as they have been to me. And I have found that God has shown up more often than not into my conversation, shown me ways to bring Jesus more naturally into conversations. And that's my hope for you. So that's it for me. Let's dream big, let's pray hard, and let's start small. See you next time.